Howdy freeze dryers, welcome back to the Freeze Drying Kitchen. Today's video pertains to my personal life the last 5 or 6 months because I've been training for a 50K endurance mountain bike ride, and I'm going to get to how this relates to freeze drying here in a second. I learned that a couple things are very important when you're putting your body through high stress, physically demanding situations. You need to have your nutrition dialed in, and you also need to have your hydration figured out. And I found myself drinking a lot of these powdered hydration type mixes. So my goal for today's video is to make a powdered electrolyte hydration drink, which will include all freeze-dried ingredients, and we will be able to just add water at the end and have our own version of a powdered drink. And I believe our version is actually going to be better than pretty much anything you can buy in the store. And before we get started on today's video, I've really been trying to make videos that are outside of the norm freeze drying box. So if you appreciate that, please let me know by hitting the thumbs up button and subscribing to Live Life Simple. In making today's recipe, we're aiming to hit all of the important parts of all of the other electrolyte drinks, which are going to be potassium, sodium, magnesium, and calcium. And making a drink that meets all of those requirements, but also tastes good and is flavored naturally from fruits can be a little tricky. But what we decided was watermelon, orange, lemon, and some coconut water. These are all really important ingredients and a really great way to get all of those ingredients naturally. Each one of today's recipes will give us 2 servings. We're gonna use dividers today to figure out a single serving portion after it's freeze dried. And we're gonna start that off with watermelon. Watermelon is a great source of electrolytes. It can help with hydration, it can help with muscle cramps, and also muscle function. I would definitely recommend using seedless watermelon just so you don't have to pick out all of the seeds. We're gonna go into a blender with this. 1 cup of watermelon for the first ingredient. Next ingredient, 1 orange. This will obviously vary greatly with the size of orange that you're using. We're using organic oranges, which are typically smaller. Oranges are also packed with all of the electrolyte ingredients that you want. And in goes 1 orange. Make sure you get the seeds out of there. I don't think the pith is that big of a deal. If you get a little orange peel in there, or if you're using a freeze-dried powder that you've already made that already has the peels ground up in it, I don't think it's too big of a deal. I don't think you want to add a whole bunch of peel in there because I do think you'll kind of get a bitterness aftertaste. And for the sake of what you're used to drinking in these drinks, I think you want the sweeter the better. Next ingredient is going to be a lemon. And just because we are not using the peels today, I would definitely recommend saving them and freeze drying them and using them for other things. But add in your 1 lemon, and by all means take these and squeeze every little drip of juice you can out of there. 2 more ingredients, this one being coconut water. We're gonna do 1 cup of coconut water, and you could argue that this is the most important ingredient in this recipe so far. If you're making this from some powders that you already have, so some orange powder, watermelon powder, lemon powder, then you could actually just rehydrate this drink with coconut water and have an electrolyte drink that way. Our last ingredient is going to be sea salt. That's going to give you your sodium. You want to use sea salt. It's way less processed than just your normal table salt or whatever. A recommended amount, in my opinion, is probably about ½ a teaspoon per serving. This is 2 servings, so I'm going to do 1 teaspoon of sea salt in here. If you're salt sensitive, you know, maybe dial it back, but definitely think about your sodium intake if your body can handle it or not. This 2 serving recipe is going to give you about 1,100 milligrams of sodium for 1 serving. To put that into perspective, 1,100 milligrams of sodium is about half of the daily requirement. We're gonna blend this all together. All right, we definitely want to blend this as smooth as possible. We want 0 pulp. And I want to go back to the sodium thing real quick, because a lot of electrolyte drinks are going to have a sodium aftertaste or a salt aftertaste. It's a lot harder to overpower saltiness than it is sweetness. So even if you add way more sweetness, it's tough to get over that sodium. That recipe made about 2 cups of liquid. I'm going on to a medium tray. I want to see how far this is going to go. I don't really want to get this too full. I would rather have it a shorter cycle time. And I know it looks like there's plenty of room to add more, because there is, but I do think this will turn out a lot better if we just do 2 cups. I'm going to put tray dividers in the 4 portion setting. That way each one of these will be 1 serving. And since we went on to pre-cut parchment paper, this is just going to fold up when we're done, and then we should just be able to funnel it into where we need. And then I'm just gonna add a lid from Freeze Drying Supplies. You will definitely see the benefits of pre-freezing in liquids. It will speed up your cycle time a lot faster. It'll also usually turn out a better end product as far as freeze-dried powders. I'm going to do 4 trays of our electrolyte drink, and I'm gonna do the 5th medium tray with just lemon peels and orange peels. And keep in mind when you're making this recipe that just like all of my recipes, this is just a baseline recipe. If you want it to be sweeter, you can add a million different things to make this recipe sweeter. If you want less sodium, dial back the salt. If you don't like oranges or you don't want lemons or whatever it is, you can change this in all kinds of different ways. And the reason I'm not adding sugar or sweeteners to this is I want something that is all natural. I don't want a sugary drink like Powerade or Gatorade. I'm gonna put this last lid on, and then we're gonna go into the freezer. We're gonna freeze this overnight until these liquids are frozen solid. All right, well, you may have seen that there are a few changes to the freeze drying room. I'm back to 2 freeze dryers again. Our electrolyte drink froze nice and solid. We want this to be completely solid for a couple of reasons. It will speed up the full cycle. It will also help from sugary things foaming up during freeze drying. And you can find helpful tips like that on our Facebook group, Retired at 40's Freeze Drying Group, and MeWe group. You can also find tips and recipes like that on the freeze drying cookbook, the online version or the hard copy versions. And we are using Harvest Right freeze dryers as we have for about 7 years now. That is my choice in freeze dryers. If you're interested in purchasing a Harvest Right or you would like to see specs, you can visit that site in our link down in the description below. And one last thing to our freeze drying repertoire. We are going back and revisiting the freeze drying insulated door pillow. We'll have a video on that coming up soon. 31 hours on that. So this tray looks pretty good, but it looks like when I froze these, you can see one side is almost all the way to the bottom. When I did the pre-freeze on these, it looks like I froze them at an angle. So you can see there's a lot more on one side. That'll be okay because 2 of these right here are 1 serving. So we'll just take 1 serving on this side, 1 serving on this side. So if we take these dividers out ever so gently and we pry up the pre-cut parchment, because this stuff is super sticky. So not too bad, not a lot of waste. Results definitely will vary depending on the fruits you're using. And sometimes watermelon especially, and oranges, don't feel like they're fully freeze dried. They're almost tacky. Let's see how much this yielded us for 1 single serving, and we will put these into individual packets so we can rehydrate them on the go. Roughly 1 cup. You can see that these are in chunks still. I would recommend keeping them that way. I think if you try to get them to blend to a powder, you're not gonna have great results. But I think if you sealed it into a small package, this one could actually go about this whole half right here, and then you could rehydrate it with 8 ounces of water. You would have a very similar to-go result where you could rehydrate it on the go when you needed it. Let's try that right now. So once this is in a bag, you can crush it up just a little bit more. And even though this did not crush down into a super fine powder like I was hoping, really what I'm hoping for is just the end result is something that's non-pulpy, very smooth, and can flow through a water bottle like this. That works perfect, actually. Let's go try this out on the trail. Initial run went great, even though it didn't powder down as far as I wanted it to. The end result is exactly what I wanted to. It's easily dispensed out of a water bottle, and at the end of this video you can stick around and see how this actually compares to leading products like Gatorade, Element, Primal, some of the big name drinks. If you compare the important ingredients, calcium, potassium, sodium, and magnesium, you can see that we are superior to all of those on the market, and you can also see how bad Gatorade is, even though it's probably the leading sports drink. Freeze-dried electrolyte drink mix. In the meantime, remember to live life simple. We'll catch you next week.